Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of the Operational Services Committee. This meeting is being live streamed. Should the live stream falter, we will pause the meeting until connection can be remade. Thank you very much. Let's move to the agenda. Public question time. Do we have any questions from the public?
No questions, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Do we have any apologies or substitutions?
Yes, Chairman, we have apologies from Councillor Paola Trimarco.
So and Councillor Bailey?
And Councillor Josh Schumann, and I'm substituting.
Do we have any declarations of interest on any of the agenda items? Super duper. Thank you very much. Can we now move to the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of November? Are you prepared or happy for me to sign these as a true record?
I'm happy to.
Thank you. Okay, Chairman's announcements. I've just got a few words to say at the end of this municipal year. I would like to thank all members of this committee for their time and contributions over the last year. I know how many hours go into reading committee papers and preparing for these meetings, especially when many of us sit on more than one committee. The contribution of this committee reaches all parts of the district. For instance, in the November meeting, we approved the private sector housing enforcement policy, the private sector housing renewal policy, the safeguarding policy, the review of outdoor sports facilities strategy, and awarded 3 sports facilities to Littleport, Soham and Ely. We are also making great progress in achieving net zero by 2040. I would like to thank all the officers who spend hours preparing reports and dealing with queries. We all appreciate your hard work and dedication, and it's been an honour to work with you. I would like us all to take a moment to remember Jo Brooks, who was the Director of Operational Services for many years, who sadly lost her battle with cancer in August last year. We have since welcomed Isabel Edgar, who has stepped into the role and made an immediate impact, and I wish her well in the future. Can I also welcome John Hill and Nigel Akers to answer any questions regarding the ECSS items. Thank you. Now we can move on to agenda item number 6, the Community Safety Partnership update.
Good afternoon, everybody. Everybody hear me? So I'm Lizzie Wales. I'm a youth community coordinator and I work for Cambridgeshire County Council, but my patch is East Cambs and I work closely with the Community Safety Partnership. I've just come in today to talk about some of those things that I do in in real terms of projects and things that are happening across the district. The role itself that I do is asset-based community development. We are youth in communities. We make up part of the Think Communities team for Cambridgeshire County Council. We work in partnership with local communities to understand local needs, key things, working with what's strong, not what's wrong. Predominantly young people and families is the places of impact, and we have a funding package, we have a training package, and we're not time limited either. So one of the key things in my role is that I can actually continue to work with people for as long as they need that support and dip in and out of that. So that's some of the key things we do: building community capacity, community-led support, connecting the system. And then through the Community Safety Partnership, there's some key projects that I've been working with. The summer detached and outreach youth work. So through sitting on the task and finish for youth group and through the problem solving group and the delivery group, we kind of get a lot of police intel, and one of the hotspots areas that was coming up was Soham around young people. I've done work in Soham historically before. Those tiny little goals are attributable to work that I did a few years ago. And there were some other areas coming up. So as a group, a collective group of agencies, so that's Community Safety Partnership, police, district council, county council, young people workers, so they're your targeted services, community connectors, and some independent organisations. We did a 7 weeks, every week in Soham, focusing on sport as our positive engagement, but not necessarily everyone had to participate. And you can see there some of the things that we did. So we were looking at some of those reporting crimes, what mattered to young people. And from that sort of 7-week project, we went out with the police were doing cricket with young people on 1 or 2 sessions. Some of the key issues identified by the young people that were using the recreation ground are probably not what people would expect. So things like young people wanted to know why the broken glass around the skate park was continually there. There was too much litter, lack of seating in the correct places, more bins, lighting, gym equipment and general safety. So as a collective, we put this report together and then I went and presented it to their town council last November, I believe it was. And not only that in its standalone, but I do believe that this is an impact of the changes that are happening now. And Soham Town Council are now going to improve their skate park. They're going to extend it and redevelop the ramps. And within this, we're still continuing that consultation with young people and youth voice, which is really key. And their youth representative for the town council and a local skate coach, Guy, and myself, we're doing some further consultation in the Easter holidays. So that's taking itself forward. And then they have agreed to larger goals finally, but no lines, I'm afraid. So it's still going to have to be jumpers for corners. But also Living Sports are carrying out some key projects as well. So that's really good. Another thing that I've been key in doing with the Community Safety Partnership, rolling out with Harriet Sugg, who's the antisocial behaviour officer employed, is to roll out the County Lines training. So it's a trainer project that goes into schools. We've been in as many schools as we can. That's not only secondary, some of that is primary. We've also started to put together some parents' evenings. So it's a 30-minute, like a 9-minute film, which was filmed in Cambridge by a local company. And then we go on to do a train the trainer, and it looks at key issues around healthy relationships, how to recognise issues, and then what you might do if you were kind of getting drawn into those issues. And that's a really, really enjoyable piece of work. It's a hot topic. A lot of people we find are talking about it. And then another project that I'm doing, which is still ongoing and is absolutely amazing and fills me with great joy. So from the Community Safety Partnership public forum events that we do, in November 21, I think we did Haddenham, and I was asked to go and talk to the young people. So I went into the school to talk to this primary, the secondary. We did detached youth work, and road safety really came up as a key thing. And getting to know the council in Haddenham, they are really, really key on their road safety. So Robert Arkenstall Primary School has the beauty of having the junior travel ambassadors in their school. It's a national campaign, lots of schools have them. So this is some of the guys, and this is one of the events that we've done. So the key thing is, in summary and very quickly, they have come up with their own poster design in the school. They're working with the parish council and recognise now the whole village has been reduced to 20 miles an hour, and that's implemented almost immediately from 1st of April, I think. We had a Turner's lorry go into their playground, and these guys helped all the other key stage students through, and to see the size of the lorry and the impact of the lorry, talking about safety. So we have a poster campaign. We're looking at now getting a parent pledge. We're now doing a bid to the Community Safety Partnership, where we're going to be putting a whole village project together, whereby we're looking at just really raising that awareness. So the young people have come up with things like wheelie bin stickers, safer routes to school. Can the big lorries have these? Can we get the buy-in? So that's a really, really nice piece of work. And then from the Bottisham Community Safety Partnership event that I went to just 2 weeks ago, their primary school latched onto it almost immediately. So it looks like it's something else that's going to go forward. So yeah, I appreciate we're short on time, and that's a bit of a whistle stop, but yeah, that's some of the things that I do.
Thank you very much, Lizzie. Does anybody have any questions for Lizzie? No, but I'd just like to say from the chair, thank you very much. I think we've met in the past in Fordham, and it was very encouraging. And I'm looking at the 20s Plenty scheme, and I think we'll be in touch again at Fordham Parish Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Besides the sort of, it seems bigger schools, are you going to do something for smaller schools? Something like in Reach or Swaffham Prior, or maybe amalgamate 2 or 3 schools together?
Yeah,
Smaller
absolutely.
ones.
Yeah, if there's a need for the project, yeah, absolutely. I'll be happy to visit.
And who initiates it?
Who
Councillor?
initiated?
Yes.
I can go in and talk to the school, if the school would be the driving force, and then make sure that everyone's kind of stitched together and working together productively. But yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
And I think we now have a representative from the police to speak to us as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Afternoon, everyone. So I'm Sergeant Matt Lupton-Pike. I'm from Cambridgeshire Police, I'm the East Cambs Neighbourhood Police Sergeant. I believe I'm going to talk about the successes of our problem solving group and working with the CSP. I believe in the last meeting that the problem solving group was explained and what we do. So I'm not going to go through that, but at the moment I chair the PSG. And it's very well attended. We've got the last meeting there was 25 people attended, which was very good, significantly more than a lot of the other areas in Cambridgeshire. We work very well together. So one of the positive outcomes that we've had is a person in an area that this person kept calling the police and ambulance service on a regular basis. And at one point there was over 100 calls to the police alone, which is causing quite a big drain on the resources, not only for the police, but the ambulance service. So we worked together in the problem solving group. We pulled all our resources together, which culminated in this person getting the help that they needed. This person been put in prison. Every time that they were released, within 48 hours, they were reoffending. So a plan was put into place while this person was in prison, and the last time this person was in, we all got together and held a meeting to see how we could support this person when they come out of prison. That person was released 5 weeks ago, and there have not been any calls to the police or the ambulance service in that time. So it's a really successful project that we had, and that involved mental health services, social care, housing, CGL, the police. So there's a number of people from the CSP that helped with that one. We also we had a problem with antisocial behaviour in Bottisham. That was identified from reports that were coming into the police, but also from the community engagement meeting that we held in conjunction with the Community Safety Partnership team. We again put that onto the problem solving group agenda. We spoke about that amongst ourselves and the different partner agencies. And in that, it was decided that the police would carry out regular patrols, but working with the schools, we worked with the schools and the children's parents, and gave regular updates to the parish council. And I'm pleased to say that the ASB has significantly reduced in Bottisham, which is another brilliant outcome, and I think the residents were very pleased with the outcome. We've also had a young male that's been involved in drug dealing, was being exploited as well by adults. We had significant concerns for him. This person again was discussed at the problem solving group, and he has now, with the help of the youth offending service, with the police, the SAFE team, the youth team as well in Littleport, it's very good. Joe Coe is wonderful. And assistance from housing and social care. This child got all the support he needed, and he's been moved away from the area to safeguard him. And he's now, I'm pleased to say, he's now doing really well in where he's been rehomed. And so the future is looking bright for him at the moment. He's doing really well by all accounts. And last but not least, because I could have gone on for ages about all the good stuff that we've been doing with the partner agencies. We've been attending the schools with the community safety team and Lizzie. We've been helping out with in the inputs on the county lines, not only at the colleges, but also in the primary schools, which year 6 predominantly, which I think is a brilliant thing, because you know they've got that knowledge before they go up into the college and start mixing with the older children. Am I going over time? Have I got enough time to just finish off? Oh right, sorry. Oh yes, sorry. Right. Yeah, so and one of my visits, I've only done one visit with Lizzie with our drugs box, and the box has got every kind of drug, legal and illegal, and we speak to the children about that, and they've got pictures of people's mouths after taking methamphetamine, which is not pretty, which hopefully put them off, you know, for life. But that went down really well. I've also attended the brilliant court experience over which is held in this room and also in the court. That's been started by the Community Safe Partnership team, and schools come in. They have an input here with knives, about knife crime, and the student gets caught with a knife in his bag. I explain the stop search process, and they're very surprised to know that they can be stop searched even though they're children. And then the interview process as well. But this is all the roles are acted out by the students from the schools, and it's a really brilliant experience for them, and they learn a lot. And we've also had meetings with the parents, as Lizzie said. I've been involved in speaking to parents at schools about county lines, and because I think it's important that the parents know what to look out for, the signs of their child being exploited, which is a number of things, and I think it's important for them to know so they can safeguard their children as well as all of us. So yeah, and that's just some of the successes that we that have come from the problem solving group and working with the CSP. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I just want to thank you both for all the work that you're doing in keeping our youngsters as safe as possible. It's a lot different to when I was growing up, when the biggest crime you commit was scrumping in a farmer's orchard. It's a different world that children are growing up in these days. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Chair. I hate to ambush you at this particular moment in time, but I know Town Council have had a few issues with some vandalism that would be remiss of me if I didn't bring it to your attention if you didn't already know. Obviously, they've given details, they even know who the perpetrators are. There doesn't seem to be any follow through. Can you give any indication? Are you looking at these things? Is there problem solving working?
Yes, it has been added to the agenda in the last meeting. It was discussed in our last meeting, which was a week last Wednesday. The toilets are closed at the moment, but we discussed getting them reopened. There's been some fires started inside the toilets. We've worked with the fire service. They've been out and they've put up some arson watch signs. But it is an ongoing project that we will work with the Community Safety Partnership and everybody else to try and resolve the issue. We've been in contact with the schools. We've asked them to do some inputs in their PHSE lessons or PCHE. Apologies. So hopefully, that education is key as well. But there's also been there are also open investigations that are still ongoing as well. So
Appreciate the update.
okay, no problem. So yeah.
Sir Ambrose Smith.
May I thank you both on behalf of Littleport residents for what you've actually done for Littleport over the last few years. It's been incredible. We have seen the changes. Changes are happening at all levels. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much then. I think we'll move on to agenda. Thank you very much. You don't have to stay unless you really want to. Okay, agenda item number 7 is the ECSS business plan for 23-24, and this will be led by Isabella Edgar with John Hill and Nigel Ankers to answer any further questions.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Fantastic. So I'm here today as Director for ECSS. Really pleased to present the new ECSS business plan for 23-24. The annual plan has been developed in partnership with the management team and really is seeking to address some of the acute performance issues that the service has experienced over the past year. But it's also very much a forward-looking plan, looking at the opportunities that we can bring to the service around service enhancement, around quality and performance, and also around compliance. Of particular note is the new Project Street Smart programme. Now, this is a programme that it will pull together all these strands of work and focus on really taking the service forward over the next year, actually, and beyond, because some of these elements will take a bit longer. And we will then start reporting on the performance of the programme to this operations committee, so that there is full oversight and transparency about some of the good work that will be happening within the service. So members are requested to approve the plan.
Thank you, Isabel. I am quite happy to propose this from the chair. Do I have a seconder? That's David Ambrose Smith to second. There are some questions submitted by various members. Councillor Inskip, are you content with the responses to your questions?
There's just one. I'm just trying to find it that I had a follow-up on. That's it. Yes, the bit that I didn't fully understand is the so the question I asked was, how were the new terms conditions signed off? Were they agreed by the board? And it says there was no requirement to agree the terms and conditions by the board, and that's the bit I guess maybe I'm not very clear on the ECSS governance, but clearly those terms and conditions would have led to a significant sort of overspend versus the agreed budget, and also effectively commits the council going forward. So is there a level above which those sorts of budgetary changes during the year have to do go to the board, or does that never go to the board? What's the governance sort of there?
John Hill will answer that question.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor. Just to also indicate, and I thought Councillor is going to raise it, it was on the 1st of November. There's been a deletion in the question. Actually, it follows the same processes that we have with East Cambridgeshire District Council in terms of, by virtue of negotiation, and the Joint Consultative Committee is the body that agrees the terms and conditions, in that, by virtue that it represents both the trade unions and the employer, and it's therefore appropriate that they need to have the authority to be able to sign that agreement off. The financial implications, and essentially as managing director, I'm acting in a similar capacity than I do as head of paid service. The financial implications of that decision, which did take some time to examine, and this is where Nigel's assistant was very valuable, are then reported to a subsequent board as part of our financial reporting arrangements. So that's essentially the governance around that, Chair. Thank you.
Are you content with that, Councillor Inskip?
So I just want to explore a little bit further then. So effectively, there's no restriction on what you can, you as managing director, you can agree within those discussions. And then so they say that the process is then simply that it then gets whatever the change is, the budgetary change just gets reported to the next board. There's no approval by the board.
Exactly, Chair, as stated in the question. Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions from any other members? Councillor Jones. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Right, I probably a bit for my own curiosity on this one, but under the service delivery plans on page 25, it talks about the black bin collections and the green bin collections, and one's 5 rounds and one's 4 rounds. And I was trying to work out, as far as I knew, all the green bins were collected on bi-weekly. I couldn't work out how they coincided with the 5 and the 4 on a 2-weekly basis.
So it's just predominantly to do with the capacity, the amount of waste that is collected. So if you're collecting dry recyclate, for example, it has, it's mainly air, so it fills up the lorries a lot quicker. And that will essentially be the reason why there are additional rounds between green waste and recycling.
Sorry, a round isn't a set area, it's just a delivery back and forth to the waste centre. Does that make sense?
Not sure I understand that second
Right.
bit.
To my understanding, the blue bins or green bins are collected bi-weekly, okay? So if you've got 5 rounds of black bags being picked up, there should be 10 over 2 weeks, if that makes sense. If one bin's collecting 5 rounds in 1 week and 5 rounds the next, there should be 5 blue bin collections 1 week and 5 blue bins collections. So the blue bins and the things should match up. Well, the 5 and the 4, I can't see how they tally up over 2 weeks.
So it's an operational nuance, I suppose, but that's not untypical of waste collection services across the country. What you don't want to do is necessarily directly match each round to another round, because like I say, the capacity, the amount of waste you're collecting, the volume of the waste you're collecting will determine whether or not the vehicles, how many rounds you need or how many vehicles you need.
I'm still confused, just one last
Okay,
question.
sorry.
Sorry, are the blue bins collected on the same day as the black bins for every household in East Cambs?
Yes.
Councillor Bailey has a
I
question.
was just going to say that, I mean, there's more blue bins than green bins, aren't there? That the second blue bin was taken up in much greater numbers than the second green waste bin. So there's more being collected and more trips to the depot and etc. More capacity required, is that fair to say?
Yeah, essentially, yeah. And so you base your rounds on what the requirement is out on the road.
Any further questions from any other further members? In which case then, oh, Councillor Bailey.
Tiny little typo that I noticed on the business plan on page 15, towards the top, financial year 23/24.
Oh, well done. Small. Eagle eyes. Oh, yes, we did mark it. Yes, we did. Okay, if we could move, oh, Councillor Jones.
Just other one clarity on page 15 again. Number of reported incidents says near misses. It says 10 or more. Should it be 10 or less, or are we looking at more than 10?
Yes, it was actually answered in the questions, but yes, we are looking at 10 or more because it's seen as a positive contributor that people are looking out for their safety and the safety of others. So we want lots of reports.
I am happy to move to the debate. If anybody has anything further to say, or are we content to move to the vote? Councillor Inskip.
Yeah, I just do want to make a few comments. I'll try and restrict myself to issues that aren't going to be covered elsewhere, because I think in terms of looking back, I think we've got the reports later on that deal with that. So I'm sure we'll come to the last quarter and the current quarter performance. What I will say is I think there are some clearly there's the concern about the increased cost, but I think there are some good initiatives in the in this year's business or next year's business plan. And in particular, recognising there's still quite a bit of work to do before we can get properly back on track. And therefore, I'm very pleased to see we have this the project Street Smart, and certainly what's described in the report. There are some good initiatives there. There's clearly the staffing issues are still, or getting those right is still an issue we need to deal with. We'll talk, I think, in a couple of reports time on the vehicle, or the next report, isn't it, on the vehicle replacement and the digital systems. And clearly that is quite a body of work. I see from one of the questions I asked, it's going to take about 12 to 18 months to do. So certainly I'm looking to see just what that project plan looks like when that comes back to committee, because I think there is, whilst the worst problems have been tackled, we still have quite a bit of work to do, and I think this is just so fundamental to get this right. This is a service that people expect to just work day in and day out, and therefore I really hope that the project Street Smart is going to deliver that. And yeah, I think I'll leave my remarks there, because the other remarks I'll pick up in future reports.
Thank you, Councillor Inskip. Councillor Ambrose Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mark. You've said most of what I was going to say here, but I think we can really say there's been acute pressures in the past, and that's what you've actually just said. And I think this plan takes us past those pressures into a modern future. So thank you very much, Isabel, for this plan. Thank you.
Do I have any other comments from any other members? In which case then I'd like to move to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. And now move on to agenda item 8. And I'd like to ask Elizabeth Knox to come forward to present the report on replacement refuse collection vehicles.
Thank you, Chair. The council are operating an ageing fleet. We have the waste collection vehicles that we want to replace that have been operating, and they are now around 10 years old. Normally you would run a waste collection vehicle sort of between 7 and 8, so that you swap them over at a time where they didn't impact massively on maintenance. And that is one of the issues that we are now seeing with the vehicles that we have. The procurement of the new vehicles has been delayed due to COVID and awaiting guidance from DEFRA about the implementation of the Environment Act. And that was just in case the way our vehicles needed to deal with a different kind of waste stream, so that we would be in a position to deal with that. The report highlights the refuse fleet contribution to carbon emissions, and they are 2/3 of the total of the council's carbon emissions. Having looked at the options of low emission fuels, HVO, hydro-treated vegetable oil, has been identified as the most realistic option at this time. If members agree to HVO being used as a fuel for new fleet and other vehicles within the fleet, it can actually reduce those vehicles that are run from it by 90% of CO2 emissions. The introduction of digital telematic information, the in-cab technology, within the purchase of the new vehicles will enable the potential for further efficiencies of CO2 emissions and improve service delivery. And this is outlined in Appendix 2. Vehicles will be purchased from the allocation capital made to ECSS by the council for 23-24 via the framework set up by RECAP partnership. 5.1 provides a summary of the cost per vehicle by alternative fuels. HVO is recommended as a fuel to use for the fleet. However, differential prices per litre needs to be reviewed on a monthly basis to ensure that costs do not become prohibitive. If costs increase too much, then the vehicles can revert to diesel. A carbon impact assessment has been undertaken, and the summary is provided in 6.3.1 of the report. Members are asked to approve the recommendations within the report. 1, to instruct the Director of Operations to proceed with the procurement of the 10 replacement vehicles under the recap framework and including the NCAP technology, and 2, to approve the use of HVO in accordance with the cost thresholds.
Thank you, Liz. Well, I am thrilled skinny to be able to recommend this or propose this from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ambrose Smith to second.
Not so skinny, I'm afraid.
Now, do we have any questions on this? I can't remember. I'm sure we did. Yes. Councillor Inskip, are you happy and content with the answers to your written questions?
I just want to follow up on the one about the question I asked about, I think the one concern I had, which was that a number of organisations moving to HVO, and it's let's say the rate at which they can add manufacturing facilities is slower than potentially the rate at which people move across, and so there's a risk that we see that the costs going up. And although I understand we could fall back to using diesel if necessary, I think that would be a retrograde step, having moved to that. So I'm just wondering, maybe as a follow-up, have we, when we're looking at the vehicle procurement, are we also looking at whether there is the potential to maybe lock in HVO procurement to try and protect against those price rises?
Yeah, what we are lucky in the fact that we already have local authorities nearby who are utilising HVO and others that are happy to do that. So we're looking at ordering by mass as well to see that that would be attractive, but we will go through a procurement process and lock in as soon as possible for those prices to actually safeguard us for the future.
Further questions, Councillor Inskip? Councillor Trapp.
Yeah, does this take, is there any additional servicing needed for HVO vehicles? I mean, have we taken that into account as well?
Yes, actually, HVO vehicles, because of the nature of the fuel, actually run better on that because of that. So the servicing of them should actually improve. And in the first few years, obviously, maintenance is going to be way down on what it is now. But we did look at that as part of the procurement process, yes.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Just one further bit. I didn't realise there was a difference between HVO and biodiesel as such. Is that another alternative? And is there any carbon saving attached to biodiesel? Has that been considered? Or?
Biodiesel, we did just look at hydro-treated vegetable oil because of what was happening locally. So we didn't actually look at that as an option for us during this process.
Do we have any further questions? Councillor Ambrose, Christine Ambrose Smith.
Thank you. I was reading a very long article in the Telegraph today, all around waste services and so on, and it gave the horrendous idea that, according to government requirements, could all be lumbered with sort of something like 7 different containers to be collected. I assume that won't actually come to fruition. If assuming that we have the black bin in addition to the blue and the green, and I know some people have extra ones, would the fleet be able to cover the addition if there was an extra one for some project? Would the vehicles be able to sort of deal with that, shall I say? Or is it a case of the number of vehicles rather than the type of vehicle?
What we will do is, as and when we need to replace the fleet, depending on what that service looks like in the future, we would look to be increasing the amount of HVO we need to run those fuels. But it may well be that the further we go down, there are other options available to us. So it may well be by that time, electric vehicles are cheaper. We also have the infrastructure to actually run off electrical vehicles, and they will be able to deliver on around. Or then there will be other, hydrogen might be another fuel option for us. So what we will look at the time of replacement of any new vehicles and buying any additional fleet, we will look at the best option available to us for that fleet.
So you'd have a pick and mix for a while, possibly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, just one query about the CO2 emissions calculations on page 3 per different types of vehicles. On the electric emissions, does that take into consideration the carbon cost of generating the electricity, and is that why that is there? And the same is applied to the others, presumably.
Yes,
Same
that
way of
is exactly
calculating.
right. So, and it's to do with making the vehicles as well. It's about.
Okay, so it's the
everything. So
embedded
it's the
carbon in
whole
the
life.
vehicle
Yes,
production
it
as well.
is.
So it's the whole shebang.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any Councillor Ambrose Smith.
Thank you, Chair. The in-cab technology will be transferable from old and to new vehicles, yes?
What we are doing is for the in-cab technology, we want to introduce it as soon as possible. So for the 10 new vehicles, they will come with it. But what we are planning to do is the refuse fleet that we have at the moment, we will retrofit into those so that the crews and the cabs can actually get used to the technology we want them to be using in all of the vehicles. So can it be moved from I'll ask Kat to add to my answer.
Yes, it can be moved from the existing refuse to as and when we replace those eventually. We can review it then, yeah.
So can I just do a follow-up on that? So effectively what we're doing is we're actually pre-training the drivers on the in-cab technology before the new vehicles arrive with the in-cab technology already built in.
So yeah, with rolling it out into the refuse existing fleet, we can do that within 3 to 6 months, have that up and running. So yeah, with the benefit of training those crews up, getting the buy-in, and then by the time we get the new vehicles, hopefully January sort of time, then they can sell the message of how positive it is and hit the ground running essentially.
That's brilliant. I have to say it's all very good news as far as I'm concerned. Thank you very much. Any further questions John, Councillor Trapp.
We're buying 10 RCVs, are we? And it's 187,000 near enough for them. So there's about, looks like another 1 million knocking around in the MTFS. Is that for the in-cab technology or spares or?
No, within that price, so within the total price in the table on 5.3, that includes the in-cab technology as well. So there is additional capital funding that we will work with Nigel on other replacement vehicles that are required for other areas. So there are some street cleansing vehicles which are at end of life or not fit for purpose. So what we will be doing it is a comprehensive programme of what other vehicles that we need to replace as soon as possible.
Will they also be HVO?
They could be HVO. What we're wanting to do is to look at the best technology for the vehicle that we're purchasing, because it may well be that we need a small cleansing vehicle for Ely, and that could be better serviced by being an EV, an electric vehicle, rather than it running on HVO. So what we will do is we will match the type of vehicle and the fuel to best suit its operation.
But also with the target of low emissions.
Definitely, all the time.
So it might not be diesel. It might not be diesel then.
We would be hoping to, with any vehicle replacement that we undertake at the moment, to actually ensure that we are reducing carbon emissions.
Thank you very much.
Just to follow up that one to that one, Liz. So effectively any vehicle procurement such as street cleansing machine vehicles will come back to the committee anyway, so we can cast our eye over it. Would that be correct? Yeah, so you'll get a chance to have a look at it in future. Thank you very much. Happy to move. Any further questions? Happy to move? Oh, go on. Oh, you want to move to the debate? Would you like to kick off, councillor Inskip?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I certainly very much welcome this report. I think as people who've heard me when we come around to discussing waste collection, the two themes I always go on about are the carbon footprint of our collection vehicles, because we know that, as has already been said, is the largest single contributor to the council's carbon footprint, and then the other one is having these digital systems in the cab. I think we're probably one of the last authorities in the country where where the refuse collection doesn't have that. So I welcome both of these. And first of all, I think actually just answering my colleague's question. HVO is a sort of a second generation sort of biodiesel type fuel. It's closer in its behavior, went from an engine to diesel than biodiesel. It also doesn't go off like biodiesel goes off. So it's all round a better choice. And I think if we look at the options, and I think the report does that well, I think we know that certainly today, when it comes to electric vehicles, there are issues with the range particularly for a rural district, and the cost is also high. But I think that's something we need to keep under review, because there's an enormous amount of investment going on into research and development around battery technologies as there's a bigger take up of electric vehicles, so that could change over time. The other area that the other option that's mentioned, I know that a few authorities have looked at, is hydrogen, but it's really important there that you get green hydrogen, and trying to obtain that is less than straightforward. So I think in terms of what we're doing today, this is clearly going with HVO is the best choice for now for these vehicles. I would hope that when these come up for replacement, we have other better options available. And in particular, although the table, for example, when you look at electric vehicles, shows not a huge difference, I suspect over time that gap will increase. But for now, this is a good choice, and I'm pleased that we're getting on and doing this. And as for the digital systems in the technology there, I remember, I think it was only last year I was being told, well, our crews couldn't cope with that, and this wasn't an option, which I didn't believe at the time. And I think, as I said at the time, and I think this is a major benefit that will benefit both the crews, whose life will be easier than particularly if we ever do another route reconfiguration and you've got a system in the cab that tells you where you're supposed to be going, that will help enormously. But I think we'll also see the efficiencies that will hopefully give some cost savings, but also a service improvement. So if we can get to the point where if your bin collection is missed and you can report it and the crew is still out there and they can pick it up, that's going to be give a much better service to people than you reporting it being printed out and a different crew being sent out. So both of the investments we're making here, I think, are good ones, whether we're looking at the carbon footprint of the authority, or whether we're looking at actually how we can improve service delivery. So I'm happy to back both.
Thank you, councillor Inskip. Does anybody else have anything to contribute? Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, thank you. It's really good that we're united in this. It's nice to see support for investment in service. I think, sort of looking back and with the beautiful benefit of hindsight, there's no doubt it's been a frustrating delay to the government's rollout of the waste and resources strategy and the Environment Act coming in. And had we known that COVID was going to happen in the middle of it all, we probably would have needed to have got on and replaced these vehicles much earlier. But obviously we were waiting to understand the details of what was going to be required from us as a waste collection authority to make sure that the right vehicles in the right manner were purchased. But it's really good that this is going ahead now, so I'm really pleased about that. And I want to thank the whole management team for putting the budget aside in a timely manner and well-planned manner for doing this, without the need for external borrowing again, which is fantastic. It's great to see the CO2 improvement, which is very significant. And as Councillor Inskip pointed out, not very much different at the moment between the HVO option and the electric option, which is quite surprising, but I suppose it's all that embedded carbon really in the actually build of the vehicles really. And my understanding is that HVO just gives us more flexibility because we have to revert to diesel because of availability or whatever, then we can, and you can mix and match, although obviously that's to be avoided. I mean, it's always been a stated aim of both our environment plan and the ECSS business plan to reduce CO2, and that's an ongoing mission. We know it's the single biggest emitter of this council is our waste fleet. So it's always been a mission to, when the vehicles were coming up for replacement, to make the right decision at the right time, and that will continue to be under review for sure. And here we are doing it, so it's good. You can't do it early because of all that embedded carbon in the vehicle. It's false economy to change a vehicle early, frankly, because my understanding is that there's way more embedded carbon in a vehicle than it will expend in its lifetime. So you have to use that vehicle to the end. I think it's fair to say we've used our vehicles to the end, probably. And I just wanted to say, as far as I'm aware, we have absolutely no plans for more round reconfigurations. I think we've done that. We've had it reviewed. The round configurations are now correct. They've been externally reviewed as well. And they are the ones that we stay with now. So we haven't got to go through that trauma again. But thank you for this. I think it's a really, really good paper. I'm really happy to see it happening and really happy to support it. Thank you to officers.
Thank you. Do I have any other comments? Councillor Trapp.
I think this in-cab technology will be a great boon to flexibility, that drivers who are not familiar with a particular route will go on to be able to do another route successfully. So I'm very glad that you actually introduce it at last we're introducing it. So thank you very much. And thank you very much for a very comprehensive report.
Yes, I would just like to add my thanks. I've never been so happy reading a report as I was reading this one. Not often I can say that, but this made me smile from ear to ear. If we have no further comments, then I would like to move to the vote. All those in favour? I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. And thank you once again, Liz and Kat. To agenda item 9A, which is the Q3 performance report for the street and cleansing services. This is you again, is it, Liz?
Would everybody, it's 9A and 9B.
Do you want to do them together?
Would everybody be happy if I did them together? Is that okay?
Are you happy with that, everybody?
Yeah.
Yes, that's fine.
So I'll just,
Thank you
very much. Q3 and Q4 reports present a mixed picture in terms of performance for waste street cleansing services. This is mainly due to ECS having had a high level of sickness absence, and this has increased our resilience on agency staff, all who need induction training as and when they arrive at work. Also managing the issue around the ageing fleet, which we have just spoken about, and also logistic issues relating to bin deliveries. So we do have some bin deliveries that are quite way behind than they should be. December saw the introduction of the new employment terms and conditions for operational staff and office admin team. This has improved staff morale, which is really good. But during Q3, sickness absence levels have risen, which is unfortunate. We have had to deal with black bag delivery sacks, and that sort of has now eventually finished. So Q4, we saw the delivery of those. However, they are still available for those people who have not had them delivered. So there are a very, very few left, but we've just left that open. We will make sure every resident gets the black sacks that they should have had. But as a result of that, of these issues, the order will be made well ahead of time to ensure that this can be managed better for 23-24. The tables at 4.1 on agenda item 9A and 9B highlight the performance for Q3 and Q4. This shows an improving picture for Q1 and Q2, however, is still below that of 21-22. I think, as highlighted, significant pressures on operational service delivery are due to our ageing fleet and downtime, but the programme to replace those of which are beyond their useful life is now being planned. With regard to sickness levels has impacted on street cleansing, graffiti and fly tipping performance. Continued challenges around this poor performance of street cleansing is due to drivers and sometimes crews being diverted from street cleaning to assist with waste collection to cover the sickness. And there are also issues for street cleansing, again, around availability and reliance of some of the vehicles. So again, they're being looked at as part of the vehicle replacement programme. The good bit of news is recycling rates are in line with national trends, a slight decrease due to the summer drought conditions, but that's something that happened everywhere. I am really pleased to be able to report that we remain within the top 25 performing authorities for recycling. And we've also shown, I think, a trend in decreasing in the amount of household waste that we're picking up. So our residual waste is decreasing as well. So that is very good news. Our development team has been focused on supporting and preparing for the implementation of the annual business plan and looking forward. With regards specifically to sickness, this quarter, unfortunately, Q4 does not show an improving picture, but analysis for the reason for sickness has been a range of seasonal cold flus, COVID and stomach bugs, which I think has been the same for every organisation. But as part of the project Street Scene, we are working with HR colleges, colleagues to review the sickness policies and procedures to ensure that they are robust and clear, and managers are supported well in implementing those effectively. And at the same time that we are looking at the minimum operating staffing levels that we need, because that may be a contributing factor to these sickness levels. So as part of this, we are ensuring that we have sufficient staffing levels to ensure that we can provide an excellent service. And along with this, we are also looking at health and wellbeing services to try and improve those sicknesses levels amongst the staff as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Councillor Inskip, you submitted some questions for 9A and 9B. You've had your written responses. Are you content with the written responses?
No, I've just got some follow-ups. So I guess on the question asked about the East Cam Street Scene Facebook page, you believe you've exhausted the possibilities you have there to try to recover that.
Yes, believe so, but happy for suggestions if
Right.
there are any.
Yeah, no, it's I had wondered why we weren't using that. The faulty bags. So you said you had 8 cases. So I'm not convinced people who mentioned it to me have always reported it. I think some. So my only concern there could have been a wider problem than just those 8 cases. Yeah.
Again, very happy for people to contact us and we'll happily replace them. We can just go by what we're told, so by all means contact us.
Okay, and then the 2 questions I asked about the proportion of streets in the, so we're talking about having areas that should be sort of swept every sort of 6 weeks, if I understood correctly. But we say we don't, do we not collect any sort of metrics on how often we because we sweep those, because I guess anecdotally what I'm seeing is, and I've heard this from residents, but I also have living in Sutton where we have the straw burning plant. Occasionally you see the straw with a badly loaded lorry, straw gets deposited. And I can point you to sort of straw in the gully that's been there for months and months. So I'm trying to understand just where we really are with that street sweeping.
Right, this is definitely an area that needs improving on. And as I've said, the unfortunate thing is a lot of our cleansing staff have been pulled off this cleansing. What we have introduced now, because I do feel that the information that has been collected and the reporting that's been done has not been sufficient for us to be able to respond to the question you're asking. So we now do have forms that are required to be filled in by the individual cleansing drivers, putting the date that they go out and do that street sweeping. And that is something that was introduced and has been implemented from the 1st of January. So we have that. So the lack of metrics that we've had that we can't provide you with historically, we are now in a position to be able to do that, and we will be able to report on that very effectively moving forward.
Okay, thank you. So I guess that's something we can cover in the next quarter.
Yeah.
Councillor Trapp and then Councillor Ambrose Smith.
Thank you. Would the in-cab technology help in this respect? Would the in-cab technology for the street cleansing also make a record of which streets have been cleansed automatically without doing any paperwork?
Yes, it would. We will certainly look at it as part of the, when we go through to the procurement process for the street cleansing vehicles.
Right, okay, great. And the other thing is I still have people who I've supplied with black bags because nothing has been delivered. So it is still, there's still some kind of fault in the reporting process. They have reported it, they haven't had the black bags that come to me. And I say, gosh, I've got these black bags stacked up here. In fact, I've just had a resident telling me that they've got a whole stash of black bags that because they only use it perhaps once every 2 weeks, you see. So we have our own system.
If anybody does come to you, they can still come to us and request black bags, and we will ensure that they are delivered to them. So please ask them to report it.
Well, they have reported.
Oh,
That's the point. And I'm the sort of person of last resort.
Yeah, regrettably, I think Liz alluded to it, but we are a little bit behind on some of the deliveries. So we'll provide an update if you like.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Ambrose Smith.
Yes. What is your address, John? Because I can get some of our residents to, sorry. Regarding sickness levels, Liz, are they similar across the whole of the council and not just ESS? Are the, yes, I'm mumbling. I can't read my own writing. I'm mumbling. The sickness levels, yes, you say are high at ECSS, but I wonder if we just still have those same problems at the council. I think we're missing.
There are issues, yes, with our neighbouring authorities, and at the last recap partnership meeting I went to, that Fenland reported as well that their sickness levels were high. I don't think they had to, but they were concerned that they were going to have to stop doing green bin collections again because the sickness levels were that high. So it does look like it's something that is not just our problem, but what we want to make sure is we can put something in place to ensure that it doesn't become a long-term problem, and we're dealing with it.
That wasn't the question, but that was well answered. There's much better answer than I was expecting. Now, the other part of the question was that here at the council, what are the sickness levels here within the offices? No, okay. Well, I'd like your answer anyway. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So Trapp, you've already had one bite of the cherry. I shall go to Councillor Jones first and then come back to you if that's okay.
Christine.
And Christine Ambrose.
Thank you, Chair. Just a bit of a sort of follow up to what you were saying, because I was thinking of a very similar thing. Is there a national reporting bit on sickness within the community, if that makes sense? Obviously, you compared to Fenland, but I didn't know if there is a national forum somewhere along the line to compare and of data.
Yeah, there is a national forum, so we are going to start doing some benchmarking against those national pictures. They tend to do it as a number of days sick per employee. And it's not just for the waste collection service, it will be under sort of manual services, outdoor manual services. So it's not exactly right, but it's a good benchmark.
I may just follow up on that. My only concern was, do we need to be providing PPE if they are more at risk, these services? That was all. Are we looking into that?
I think what we'll do is I'm speaking, I've got an appointment to speak to a workplace health and wellbeing coach from the county council. So that's great. So what we will do is we can look at what are the issues around sickness levels? Is there anything else that we need to be doing? And I mean, yes, definitely PPE, that is essential. What I would prefer to do is if there's stuff that they are doing that is actually creating a problem, I would like to look at how can we stop them doing what they're not meant to be doing. But we will look at that whole picture. We look at the reason that they're off sick and then just look to see what trends there are. If there's additional training they need on manual handling, we'll do that. So it just depends on what comes up as to how we will deal with those issues. But definitely that general health and well-being we are sort of going to be concentrating on, along with as part of driving down sickness levels.
Councillor Trapp.
Thank you very much. I know, I'm not sure whether it's at this point or later when the business plan, not the business plan, the forward budget, but there is a contingency for agency staff, which I think must be quite high. Why don't we actually have more employees, therefore not pay, instead turn that agency amount into actually having employees, which give us more resilience?
I totally agree. And actually, we have just recently advertised for both crews and loaders. What we are trying to do is we're trying to encourage a more diverse workforce as well. So we're trying to encourage more women to want to come into the service. We have one really, really good lady that is she a driver or a loader? A loader, and what we would like to do is to see that diversity within the workforce, and we would like to see them as our permanent employees rather than as relying on agency staff.
Good, thank you.
Councillor Ambrose Smith.
Street cleansing. I can only really speak for Littleport. We do live in more or less in the centre of Littleport. There are some streets, Main Street, Globe Lane, Hitcher Street, Victoria Street, Granby Street, that are almost a car park. Now, I think the level of street cleaning is actually quite commendable, but how on earth do your crews make a decent job of cleaning a street satisfactory, as in properly cleaning it? You can't just lift a car or two out of the way, can you? Do they ever look at a road and think, can't go there, it's not worth a candle?
Under normal circumstances, we'd expect our street cleansing crews to carry a broom and to try and get to those more accessible places. But yes, they wouldn't be able to necessarily get into everywhere. Moving forward, as part of the Street Smart project, we will be looking at those sorts of areas where we can perhaps do some communications around a day. We might be able to get there to politely ask people to move on, so that we can get access as best as possible. And that, like I say, that will be taken as part of the project moving forward.
I think the problem is made worse because a lot of these streets, they're old Victorian and slightly later houses. They are built on the pathway. The pathway is not wide enough. They don't have, entrances to go around the back, shall we say, and there is nowhere else to park. So, houses rarely just have one vehicle these days as well. So it's one of those unsolvable problems almost, but thank you for your thoughts on this.
If I could just add that, well, parked cars causes a problem sometimes as well for picking refuse up as well, because it's inaccessibility. So when that happens, if people then complain about the fact that their bins haven't been picked up, we can say, well, we couldn't get down because your cars were parked there. But yeah.
Do we have any further questions for the officers? As this agenda item, these two agenda items are just for noting, I'm quite happy to note. Is committee happy to note? Do you want to have?
Just wanted to make a couple
Yeah.
of comments about
Okay.
some of the answers we've heard. And just the report comments, because clearly we've still got some way to go to get to the metrics that we need to hit, and the business plan talked about, I think, metrics, that some changes there that will help better capture the sort of service that we're getting, and how that's doing. And you know, we are still, you know, seeing issues. It was a few weeks ago, there were issues affected me directly, but it turned out I was far from the only one when I had a missed green bin collection, and quite a few in my area. And as well as, strangely, one black bag that was collected and another one wasn't. But I think it is worth just reflecting also, as we've talked about, on the street cleansing, because I think that's, in a sense, become the poor cousin of the refuse collection. And we see that in the metrics. So we see the overall performance of street cleansing is worse than refuse collection. I understand that, so that we're, you know, the bins need to be emptied. And if we are short of drivers, then they have to be diverted. But I think that's why I asked the question, to try and understand in reality just how bad it was, because the example, my Sutton Straw example, is on the main route through the village. It's not an area that has problems with parking, but and it's particular section I walk past most days with one of my dogs. So it's so I know that has been there since at least July last year. So I think we do need to look at what we can do to get both the street cleansing performance up as well as the refuse collection. I do, having said that, I think the sickness, the answers, and we've been heard, and the steps that are being taken on sickness are far more comprehensive than I've heard at this committee ever before. So that gives me a lot more confidence that we're appreciating the problem and looking at not, you know, a whole set of steps that we can take to address that, because clearly it is probably the biggest problem that we still have left, and there probably isn't just one solution. I also think potentially there is the one aspect that we haven't covered, is that although the pandemic is over, I don't think COVID has gone away, and I'm sure most of us keep hearing of colleagues and friends who still get COVID from time to time. And if you're in an office-based job at a desk and maybe working from home, you sort of it has much less impact than if you have to go if you've got a manual job. So I'm one of those lucky people with an office-based job, but I found that for me, when I had COVID a couple of months ago, the fatigue lingered for quite a while, and if I tried to do anything that was strenuous, I struggled. So I'm sure that is one factor that isn't that is making it difficult for our crews. And so going back to the well, one of the answers we heard, but also back to the business plan, making sure that we have those correct staffing levels, I think, given where we are today, I think is also going to be really important if we can get back to that point where there is a consistently good service delivered. So looking forward to hopefully some better figures in the next quarter, and some more detailed figures on the street cleansing side.
Yeah, just to comment on some of that, because of course correct staffing levels are critically important, and we are a small service, so you know our resilience isn't as great as a larger operation. We're a very small authority comparatively with others, so clearly that's important, and part of that is about attracting staff in the first place, and being able to get staff, which was one of the very necessary reasons for you know, increased investment into the service, so that we could attract both drivers and crews, and our rates of pay are now attractive in comparison with neighbouring authorities. So that was a really important part of the investment that was agreed at full council. And not that alone. There were other very necessary reasons for that investment of full council. And because it's been alluded to in now twice in the chamber, you know, I think it's really important to recognise that investment is well made and it was required. You know, to not have agreed that investment would have plunged the service into inoperability literally overnight. So it was critical that it was agreed. But it is not, yes, it's more than some of our neighbouring authorities, but it is not wildly out of kilter with neighbouring waste service authority increasing costs. You know, the increasing costs are just in absolute inevitability of, you know, 12% inflation, increasing fuel costs, increasing wages, increasing supplies. You know, so we are not alone or particularly unusual in having an increased cost to our waste service. So, you know, it was critically important that we agreed that investment. And I hope that it's given us some good foundation to go forward, because we now have, you know, attractive rates of pay, more attractive terms and conditions. Some of those need careful management and monitoring, because, you know, we are now seeing increased sickness rates, and you know, they are somewhat alarming. So that's got to be carefully managed. But I think we've heard today that it absolutely is being. And so, you know, we're hopefully on the road to getting back to what was previously a very, very good waste and recycling service that we, you know, since it came in-house. And there's lots of members around the table who didn't know the service when it was out with a private provider. And that wasn't much fun either, frankly. So yeah, I think it was still the right decision to bring it back in-house. It gives us much greater flexibility, which we need in terms of the configuration of the service and the way that we manage recyclables and all the rest of it. So I think it's the right decision, and it was absolutely the right decision to put more investment in as well.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Well, I am one of those members who remember Veolia, and I remember sitting with Jo Brooks and a member of the Veolia team, and her informing them that because there had been so many missed bin collections in that particular month, the fine was £33,000. Just to give you some idea of how poor the Veolia service was and how wonderful our current crews are. I don't think there's many households in this district that haven't been affected by either flu or COVID in the last 4 to 5 months. I know certainly it's raced through our family quicker than I thought was possible. So yes, I find myself in a very rare situation of agreeing with Councillor Inskip that COVID has not gone away. And I should imagine 3 people sitting in a cab quite close together it will affect them very rapidly. And as you say, fatigue and recovery affects everybody differently. Either way, I am very happy to note this report. Do I have any objections to us noting these 2 reports? Thank you very much. We now move on to the service delivery plans. Do you want to stay here, or are you going to gamble? Yeah. Going to be reported by Isabel or presented by Isabel.
Hi, thank you, Chair. So we have the annual service delivery plans and the end of year reports that report on the performance for the past 12 months. The purpose of these plans is that they set out the strategic direction of the services for the next 12 months, and they're based on the priorities that were already defined in the corporate plan from 2020-23. The end of year reports provide an overall positive picture of performance of the services over the past year. And the SDPs also, service delivery reports, also include the performance KPIs for the following year. And these will be reported back to Operations Committee in November as the half year report. I do have most of the officers here with me today, so we can take questions on the reports, but we're not going to separately present them. And the request is to approve the service delivery plan and note the end of year report.
Thank you, Isabel. Councillor Inskip, you had some questions on, oh no, you didn't. You didn't have any questions on this. That was wrong. That was a mistake. Goodness gracious me. Does anybody have any questions on the service delivery plans? In which case, oh, Councillor Jones, you've let us down. Come along. Right, do I have a proposer for this? I'm happy to propose from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ambrose Smith, Christine Ambrose Smith is seconding. Or are we happy to move to the vote? Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, just to say, you know, we've scaled back the number of times that we receive these. And I don't think, you know, our officers should take our silence as ingratitude for, yeah, I know that a huge amount of work goes into these, and they are really important documents because they are a measure of how services are doing, you know, and where we're at. And, you know, it's kind of a self-governing process really for the services. But I want to say thank you to all our officers that put the enormous amount of work that go into these. They are really important. You know, it's our way of showing what we're doing and what we're not doing, and it's there for the public to see. And before we had these, you know, it was very hard to understand where a service was. So, you know, please don't take our silence as not being grateful for these, and not that, you know, they are the right thing to do, and that, you know, they're a great set of reports, and they're the right measures that we've asked for. And thank you very, you know, thank you.
Councillor Ambrose Smith.
Just to follow on from Councillor Bailey's comments, I don't think they're just for us. They are for the managers themselves to make it work. And thank you again, because I know how much effort you put into it all. Thank you. And your teams. Thank you.
If Councillor Trapp. Caught my eye.
I may not have got the colour coding right. Is there any, yes? So the blue is good. I mean, that's what I sort of assumed it was. There's the colour coding just random then.
The colour coding relates to the corporate objectives. So depending on what colour it is, it sort of ties back to one of the corporate objectives. So that's why there's different colours.
Right, so somewhere I've got a colour coding chart about corporate objectives.
Yes.
Oh, glad, thank you very much. I'm delighted at last I've got the hang of this.
No, but not at all.
Absolutely. And this is red means something. What colour code is that?
That means turn it off. I would just like to offer my thanks as well, because I know how much work goes into these. You do, all of you do a fantastic job. And can you please pass all our thanks back to your teams to say, please keep up the good work. You've done a fantastic job for the last 4 years. I'm just, you know, really, really proud to have been working with you for the last 4 years. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Inskip, Councillor Inskip.
Yeah, so just, I guess, so I agree, it's really important to have these this report and to measure the performance. Just following up on Councillor Trapp's comment, I would ask whether we can look, well, a couple of things in terms of what we're measuring. One is whether we can make it easier to identify whether we're on target or not, because it's not, maybe that's where the colour coding confused Councillor Trapp. So I think it would be good to easily sort of to have some sort of maybe RAG rating around the targets. The other thing I struggle with is a few of the targets which are almost like a narrative rather than a measure, and I think it would be useful to look at whether we can turn some of those into more of a let's say something we can adequately sort of measure. I'm not. There are a few examples, but I'm not going to go through and pull out a particular one or two. But I think it would be useful to think about. Is there something there that that we can have a more granular sort of target, because there's one or two where it's it's completing something, but it's not really clear to me whether that's gone well or could have gone better, or actually has gone better than expected. So just a plea to think about that. Now, I know that we've already got the plan for next year, so I don't want to sort of try and change that now. But going forward, I think that would be something to think about.
Thank you, councillor Inskip. Does anybody have any further comments to make? Anna Bailey.
Well, I would only say that, you know, it's a balance, isn't it? Because if you're not careful, we end up with reams and reams and reams. You know, they're quite detailed, and what we don't want to do is completely overwhelm everything. I mean, I think if there are suggestions on individual items, it might be really helpful to the service leads to, you know, hear about those, because if they're not working, you know, they're not right, then they do need changing. I mean, I find them quite helpful. I think there's a good balance between some of the things do need a narrative, don't they? Because they're not just simple numbers. You know, they're more qualitative than that. So I think there's a reasonable balance, and I'm sort of more or less happy that officers put this forward. But if there are specific examples, I think it'd be really helpful for the service leads to hear those.
Councillor Jones.
Just for one of the examples I think Mark was talking about, I think I raised the social and community infrastructure. It was housing and advice services. It said the target was 250 annually. We've got no idea whether that's all the problem, whether that's it's on pay. It's housing and community advice service at the end of year report 22-23. It's right at the bottom. They've got no page numbers on, unfortunately. So. Okay. Pay. Well, it's 2F housing report page 1. But it says 250 annually is a target measure. We've got no idea whether if that's good or not. Yeah, if the problem's 1,000, if there's 1,000 people and the target's only dealing with 250 of them. So what's the size of the problem we're dealing with? That's I think Mark was looking.
Yes, I think we can leave that with you as well to take away. Yep. Other comments, questions, debate? Happy to move to the vote. All those in favour of the 2 items?
Yep.
That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move, who's doing? Julene. Thank you very much. Simon, I think you're going to do this on behalf of Julene. This is agenda item number 11, which is the local enforcement plan. Fire away.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to commend Julene Roman and Annalise Lister. Actually, I think they've put together a really user-friendly, really interactive guide to planning enforcement, and it kind of demystifies some of the things that planning enforcement is all about. It's the most user-friendly guide I've ever seen, and I've got to say, when I looked at it, I didn't need to add in very much at all. And I think it's written in really good plain English. I think it's going to be a really useful tool on the website. It can be cross-referred when we deal with complaints and all the other things around enforcement that we have to deal with. The only slight health warning I'm just going to give is on confidentiality. If you look at page 6, it says about anonymity and confidentiality. The file will remain confidential during the investigation, and once the case is closed, any personal data will be redacted. Sometimes that can cause difficulty because when we've got an ongoing investigation and we're getting a lot of questions, we have to be mindful that enforcement can lead to court cases and things can be disclosed in court. But we try and manage that as best we can, and we explain how we will do communication in the future on enforcement. But that's just a quick health warning, just in case that crops up from time to time.
Simon. So we're being asked to consider the local enforcement plan relating to planning enforcement. Do I have a proposer?
Yes, happy to
Councillor
propose.
Bailey And a seconder, councillor Ambrose Smith. Can I just say, before anybody else says anything, could I ask that a copy of this is sent to every parish council? It needs to be mandatory reading for every single member, elected member who joins this council. It needs, and they need a test on it, not the parish councils, but the members, because this was a breath of fresh air for me. I'm thinking, thank goodness, but we need to get it in front of every single parish council because it's the biggest topic, and certainly in the 5 parish councils that I attend, planning enforcement is always something that it's like a dark art. I think people just don't understand what people can and cannot do. So thank you very much. And can you pass my thanks on to Julian, because this is wonderful. Dave, you have some questions, councillor Inskip? Are you content with the responses?
I'll go as far as to say I understand the responses, so I haven't got a further question, but I will have I'll make a couple of comments when we come to the debate.
Does anybody have any other questions for Simon? No, in that case then, so back to you, councillor Inskip.
So I agree with you about the importance of planning enforcement, and therefore the importance of keeping having an up-to-date local enforcement plan. And I know why it's here, because I also sit on the audit committee, and it came out of one of the audit findings that we haven't had an update in nearly it's going to be 9 years next month. And this does concern me that we, so I'm really pleased we have it now, but it shouldn't be that it becomes an audit finding with an action to correct it. This ought to be part of our standard process, and we ought to, the answer given as to why it wasn't updated over those sort of preceding sort of 8 and a bit years is that the workload of the then planning manager was such that they were unable to schedule the required time to review the plans due to other priorities. I think this is a priority. I suspect that may well reflect on the workload that we're putting onto our planning manager, and hopefully that is resolved now. But it does concern me that it has taken nearly 9 years to get this document updated, and it has required the internal audit to raise this and for it to be an action that needed to be completed by this Friday. So as long as we approve it today, we're just in time. I think the other thing that is important is, and I would agree with you, Chair, people need to know about this. So certainly parish councillors, I fully agree with that, being one myself. But I think more generally, we need to look at how we communicate this to residents so that they are aware of the policy, what you can and can't do, and how to go about reporting issues where they believe they have them. So really glad it's here, but would have liked to have seen this some time ago and not have to come up through an audit finding. But now we've got it, let's make sure that, well, assuming we all agree it this evening, let's make sure that people are aware of it and we can make use of it.
Councillor Inskip, do we have any other questions for Simon? Thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Ambrose Smith, yes or no?
No, the review process every 3 years. You're happy with that, Simon? You think that's sensible, and what happens in other organisations?
Yeah, unless any new huge change in policy arrives. Just if I can mention parish council engagement, and also you mentioned some of the sort of qualitative measures in the performance plan, which I understand are difficult to measure. But one of the things we're going to do is a new way of engaging in parish councils. We're going to have a parish council event in this chamber, hopefully. And I think one of the things we'll run through, and that'll be in the summer, will definitely be this enforcement local plan. So that will be part of our engagement over the next year. Rather than going around individual parishes, we're going to have an event in the chamber and present everything that we do as a planning service.
Thank you, Simon. Oh, Councillor Trapp.
So I'm sorry. I'm not sure whether it's debate or here or whatever, but we have had recently in two of the planning meetings, we have had look at enforcement of builders of a developer not fulfilling the full contract. And we've had to, what kind of teeth can we get actually to this? Because there is, and I think the chair knows as well the particular places. So, you know, what teeth can we get? Can we get more resilience, more, you know, sort of?
Well, I think if the other thing, if you look in the SDP or the service delivery plan, we've got some enforcement, qualitative measures, and I appreciate Councillor Inskip's point about that. We're looking at monitoring big developments more effectively and hopefully making sure that in the implementation of planning permissions, the Section 106 agreements are checked properly, the conditions are checked properly, and that we're on top of things rather than sort of coming to us late in the day, so that we're rather more sort of proactive rather than reactive as an enforcement service. And that's in the target. I haven't worked out a way of measuring it yet, but I'll take that on board for next year. But that's certainly one of the key priorities for the enforcement service in the next year.
I mean, yeah, there are two cases I know where the agreement was that the whole land would be sold with the house or development. And in both cases, in the two cases I know, land had been retained and, oh, look, there's some land here, can I put in that? So there's things like that as well, which people are taking advantage of. And you're looking at that, are you?
Yeah, that's all part of development management. Is not only about the point to planning permission, it's about everything beyond and aftercare. And that's something we're going to try and improve upon. It's not always easy and it's complicated. And you mentioned how forceful can we be? For example, if you look at the toolkit, there's an example of stop notices. You see the stop notices, but if you then read the guidance around stop notices, it's really difficult. If you stop a developer in mid-track, you're up for compensation unless you've got really, really good reason to stop them. So some of the tools we've got available look quite good in legislative terms, but in actuality, they're quite difficult to use. So it's all about negotiating, being on the ground, having a presence, having the, you know, the hard hats and the turning up on site when a developer starts. Here's ECDC planning enforcement. We're here. We're going to be looking at you and making sure you're fulfilling your obligations rather than just us waiting for complaints to come in. We're going to be a little bit more out there on the big developments. That's the plan.
Yeah, because certainly one of them I know caused a lot of angst at parish council, in the whole parish actually, and provided a lot more work for the planning team because we had to sort of fight that as well. Thank you.
Smith.
Simon, just to I welcome this, dare I say, parish council, town council seminar. That's be very good. But within that, will you also, in that training, will you also include help for the parish councils when they get their plans and so forth that they have to look at? Guidelines on how to report back, what to look for, and what is, dare I say, kosher and what isn't kosher, and so forth. It's not just about this. It's about looking at the plans and what is available.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think if you look in the document, there's a part in there about if you're not feeling comfortable about reporting directly to the council, you can report through parish councillors and through ward councillors. And yeah, you're right. What we'll do at the parish event is we'll try and make it more practical for their individual needs and bring it to life, hopefully, and say, you know, when we're looking at big developments and making sure that landscaping is done on time and the transfer of open space, the kind of thing that we've been discussing over the last few weeks, that's the kind of thing that we would like your eyes and ears on, so you can report to us as well, because we can't be out there all the time. So that's really helpful.
It's not just the big developments. It's sometimes the small houses, the small fences, and so forth. Okay, thank you.
Anna Bailey, Councillor Anna Bailey.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's just really important to say that, you know, this is really setting out what is already happening in the service, isn't it? And I think we have a good enforcement service that strikes the right balance, actually. And so much of this for me is, you know, particularly with the larger developers that we have an ongoing relationship with, is about building up that trust in the first place. And as you say, the proactive approach. And I think it's really important that we don't lose our can-do attitude that we have. You know, what we're trying to do is support people who want to carry out development to do it well and to do it properly and to do it in compliant manner. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Officers and planning committees alike hate the word retrospective. Yeah, it's never a good start to a planning application, is it? And that's what we want to avoid. But what we're trying to do is help people proactively get to a compliant development. And I think it's really important that we keep that approach. We're not behaving like, you know, mini police parading around the district looking for, you know, breaches. That's not what we're about. I don't think, you know, we're much more open and can do and positive and transparent than that. And I think it's really important that we hold on to that, but that we are robust when we need to be, because my God, sometimes do we need to be. And, you know, so the one thing I was going to say about the document was how really accessible it was, really well written. Thank you.
Any further comments? I just have to say from personal experience in my ward, it's not the big developers we have to worry about. It's the smaller ones that seem to regard red tape as something somebody else does. And sometimes the six shooters as well. Right, okay, so are we happy that we have now debated this sufficiently? Shall we move to the votes? All those in favour? I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Simon. We now move on to agenda item number 12, the approval of the draft food safety enforcement policy for consultation. And I'm handing over to Richard Garnett, who's going to go through the papers.
Thank you, Chair. The food safety enforcement policy was last updated in 2015. The policy has been updated to hopefully simplify the language, but still explain the actions that are available to officers and when they might be used. The policy also incorporates any necessary changes from the Food Standards Agency's Code of Practice and Practice Guidance that govern the work we do. There is an ability built into the policy to make minor alterations and for these to be recorded. The recommendation is that the committee approve the policy and allow it to move to a 12-week public consultation process.
Thank you very much, Richard. Do I have a proposer for this? Councillor Ambrose Smith, and I'm happy to second from the chair. Do we have any questions for Richard? Oh, Alec.
Thank you, Chair. Just a matter of wording. You said plain English. 2.4, it says prosecution will not normally constitute a punitive response to minor contraventions of food safety legislation. The word constitute seemed to be counterintuitive a little bit to me, as though it's supposed to result in or wording or something like that. I take it that's what we mean by it. Sort of, it would not result in it.
Yes, one of the reasons for taking this out to public consultation is to ensure that it does meet the requirements. So if the language does need to be simplified, then by all means, we will simplify the language.
Are you responding to the consultation, Councillor Jones?
Hasn't gone out yet.
Hasn't gone out. You've got to agree it to go out first and then you can respond to the consultation. Councillor Beck.
I'm definitely in support of Councillor Jones. I can see exactly what he's saying. That's not quite the most accurate word to use, is it?
Any Councillor Inskip?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, given the the policy that we now have, or we're going to send out for consultation, talks about this review on an annual basis. What were we doing before then? Is it that nothing needed to change since 2015, or we just didn't have a process in place to review it?
I joined the council in 2019, so I don't know how the 2015 policy was written. Obviously, there haven't been any major changes. One of the things that we were looking for that hasn't happened yet is whether the legislation that we use was going to change with the Brexit vote. So we are aware that the legislation is now being looked at. And that was one of the reasons why I didn't want to jump into reviewing it last year. If, 2 years later, we were going to have to massively rewrite it. But at the moment, things look as if they're going to sort of settle down, which gave me an opportunity to look at things and make sure they're up to date.
Any further questions, excuse me, for Richard? No, thank you very much, Richard. Are we happy to move to the debate? Or are we happy to move to the vote? Oh, beg your pardon, councillor Ambrose.
Happy to move to consultation.
Yes, are we? Agenda item to go out to consultation. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Richard, for your time. I think you're staying on. So we now have the approval, agenda item number 13, approval of the draft health and safety enforcement policy for consultation. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Again, the health and safety enforcement policy was last updated in 2015. Again, the policy has been updated to hopefully simplify the language. The policy also sets the same tone as the food safety enforcement policy. Again, the recommendation to the committee is approval of the policy and allow it to move to a 12-week consultation.
Thank you, Richard. Do I have a proposer for this item?
Yes, Chair.
And I'm happy to second from the chair. Any further questions for Richard on this?
So I guess the situation here is similar, that you don't really know what happened before you joined in 2019, but more recently you've gone through and looked at this policy.
Exactly. Thank you, Chair. Yes.
Are there any others, or are these the only two?
These are the only two that I control.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Knox is, Councillor Knox, Liz Knox is waving furiously at me.
Hi, I think both of these policies, I mean, the unfortunate thing is that we've gone through a period of change. They've not been reviewed. What we now need to get them onto is a 3-yearly review cycle. And these came to light, unfortunately, due to the review of these enforcement policies via audit. They were there. The changes haven't been massive, as you can see. I think it's more of an updating and simplification, but that was an oversight from us, which we have now and will rectify and continue to review on a regular basis.
Thank you, Liz. Do we have any further questions for the officers? Thank you very much. Your time. Now we move to agenda item number 14, which is the Environment Act 2021 implementation, and the report will be dealt with by Ms. Edgar.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to bring all members up to speed with the work that Liz and I have been leading on in relation to the government's changes around the recycling and resource strategy. It's a genuinely fast-moving picture, and it is made more complex by the fact that the government have not yet published their requirements for local authorities, and to date everything has been managed through informal and non-minuted meetings that we've been having with DEFRA. However, we do have some clarity now around what the future of waste collection services will look like. One of the challenges that's outlined in the report is the fact that there hasn't been any allocation at central government level for funding for any waste disposal authorities, and this has become a real bone of contention, particularly for the county council, who by law, if we implement the waste strategy, the Environment Act, there would be a cost to the county council. Now, as a recap partnership, we've really worked hard, come together to find an aligned position to present to DEFRA. And I'm pleased to say that there is a further update following this report when it was originally written. So the County Council have confirmed that they are not going to request transition arrangements to DEFRA, and we are currently agreeing a draft letter that will go to DEFRA and MPs that will continue to lobby for financial support as a recap partnership, and so that we can all together deliver the waste strategy. Recap will also work together for an overview of the entire strategy, and also how that funding is going to or the lack thereof is going to impact the County Council, and to see if we look at waste collection and waste disposal as a whole, whether there are some opportunities for the County Council to find funding. So the next steps really for us as a waste collection authority is that we will have to now start preparing to implement the requirements of the Environment Act. And a further, so we'll have to decide on the service type and the collection methodology that's going to be appropriate. And I would just, as a health warning, following Anna's comments, Councillor Bailey's comments about round configuration, with the implementation of any of these new requirements coming out of the Act, we may be required to undertake a round reconfiguration project, because the types of waste and the methodology will change substantially. We have until 2025 to undertake that piece of work, and all the activities that we're currently doing at the moment will contribute to that, both from the ECSS management point of view, but also procurement of vehicles and implementation of technology will help us deliver the Act. So at this stage, it's just for members to note the report.
Thank you, Isabel. You've submitted some questions. Councillor Inskip, are you content with your responses, or the responses, I should say?
Yes.
You are. As this item is just for noting, then are we happy to note?
Yeah.
Thank you. Noted. Now move on to agenda item number 15, which is the budget monitoring report. This is definitely not Ian. Nice to see you, Anne. Thank you for waiting.
This is the budget monitoring report for the Operational Services Committee for Q3, which was the end of December. Members are requested to note that this committee is currently projected an overspend of £250,000 on revenue and an underspend of 1.8 million on capital. Any questions?
Thank you, Anne. Councillor Inskip, you had a question. Are you content?
No, I don't.
Three questions. Are you content with the responses?
So on the first one, what I was trying to understand was that there's an explanation given as to why there's a £20,000 overspend on building regulations. I was trying to understand whether that's whether we were seeing any improvement in the situation. So the reason given was the cost of living crisis has resulted in individual homeowners putting a freeze on their building work, and a significant increase in material costs. It's also put developers are also putting the brakes on and postponing work. So I was trying to understand whether that's a continuing problem, and therefore we could well see a similar situation in the next financial year.
We're not sure about the next financial year, but we're expecting this to continue for the whole of this financial year.
I'm happy with the answers to the other two questions I asked.
As this item is just for noting, are we content to note? Yeah. That's so noted. Thank you. We now move on to agenda items 16A and 16B. Again, items just for noting. There are no written questions. Does anybody have any questions, or we are happy to note?
Happy to note. Chair.
Happy to note. Thank you very much. We now move then on to the forward agenda plan. The next meeting is scheduled to be on the 19th of June. I'm not sure there's anything really much to say really, except just to note the forward agenda plan. Which will be dealt with by Operational Services Committee in whatever form that might take. And now then at 6:24, I'm quite content to bring this meeting to a close. Oh, I beg your pardon. So we have the, I haven't got that. Oh, that's that, yeah, do beg your pardon. Yes, so the urgent action on the grounds of urgency, the voluntary action community. This is just for noting, is that right? Yeah, yes.
Sorry, Chairman, just for my, under the Constitution, when we get an urgent action memo, it has to be reported to the next meeting of the committee. And since this came in to enable us to have it here for noting, because otherwise it would have been carried forward to the next council, which was within the new council, which seemed a little bit incongruous. So we brought it to this meeting for noting.
Your pardon. This is on the forward agenda plan for June anyway. Yes. So are we all content to note the action taken on the grounds of urgency as well? Thank you, noted. In which case then now at 6:25, I would like to draw this meeting to a close and thank you all for your attendance. Thank you very much.